Yup, I'm healing. Kinda. Trying. Sorta. Back in therapy, baby. Reporting for the order.
It's Michelle in the middle, where the chaos is real. We laugh, we cry, we try. It's time to talk about how we feel. It's Michelle in the middle, where the chaos is real. We laugh, we cry, we try. It's time to talk about how we feel.
All right, so hey, it's 2026. Welcome back. Welcome back. And hey, yeah, that title. That title pretty shock and awe, right? Shock and awe. But for all the clickbait that title for this episode has, there's reality behind it. So the last quick rambling session we had was talking about Merry Griefmas in Masking New Year. And it was just really sharing my experience through this past holiday season in 2025, pretty much. So the title, My Funeral. Um yeah, a part of me died last year. A part of me had to leave last year. A part of me had to be buried last year. And it was necessary in continuing my healing process. So what does that mean? That means some thought patterns, some truths that were not truths, some narratives that I created to justify behaviors. I had to look at myself honestly and put those to rest. So that's the title, right? The parts of me that were not real, the parts that were a facade, the parts of me that weren't serving me. Because we hear that a lot, right? Let go of what's not serving you. It's kind of complicated when the thing that's not serving you are parts of who you are, who your persona is. So, who you have been for others, who you have told, or what you have told yourself, the excuses, all of those things had to be boxed up. And also making peace with the individuals who might have been impacted by those false narratives, by those behaviors, by those maladaptive uh, things that I learned to survive trauma, but was no longer helping me in everyday life. Right. So I had to say goodbye to all of those. So what's left? And I think the last episode I was talking about when the fog clears, who are you? You've lived in a wonderland, for lack of a better word, and for any of those who know about my other podcasts, nod to that. But you've lived in a world that really wasn't reality. So when the fog clears, who are you? And I know I talked about how that could be scary, but in a sense, it could be really exciting because now it's like relearning, revisiting things that you've missed or pushed aside. For me, it's been going back to when I was much younger, when some of this trauma and things occurred, and picking up where I left off, right? Things that I used to enjoy doing and adding that to things now. Um, but where am I where some of the other things that I've talked about, right? Because everything's not rainbows and roses. There's still challenges. Spent time with my brother over Christmas, and he was extremely helpful in helping me recall memories. So my memories are coming back, and not just of my mom, but of all the other individuals that I lost because I no longer act like the events didn't happen. And even in that conversation with him, he was asking me, he was like, if you have detached so hard where you're not remembering all those painful things, why do you need to? Right? If you've detached so hard, maybe that's a good thing that you're not remembering the stuff. And it was in that moment when I got it, right? The light bulb came off. You have to make peace with it, because just because cognitively you're not remembering things, your subconscious is. So you're having behaviors and responding to things from a wounded space that you won't recall, and you can't address what you have no awareness of, right? So that's why. That's why it's so important. Um so yeah, still working on the memories. They are coming back, so that's good. I have found out as I've gone through the experience with my therapist that I do have avoidant attachment styles. I found it really interesting. I put a TikTok out, and then there's some videos on the Instagram page about avoidant attachment, and I'm getting a lot of feedback in DMs. I just want to say I am not the spokesperson for the avoidant attachment person. I feel like it's a spectrum, a continuum. I don't feel I'm that far down the spectrum or the continuum when you're looking at avoidant attachment. But I do have behaviors that I'm working on, right? Falling off the face of the earth. When you start to feel feelings, you push away, you disappear. I think having an awareness of that is helping as well. Because when I start to feel I'm doing that, I'm like, okay, this is what's going on. I can address it and not create a narrative that, well, if this person's going to do this, then I'm going to do this, or make some story up to justify my behavior. And that's what I've done for a lot of things. I will create a narrative to justify my behavior. And not just in relationships, but also when I was dealing with grief and making a narrative that my family is really not that interested in me. So that gave me excuses not to go see them when that was not the case at all. That was grief talking. So now I'm aware of these things, right? For attachment, and again, I am not the spokesperson for avoidant attachment, but I will say when somebody is going through those behaviors, it's out of fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being hurt. So for me, one way I've been addressing that is if I have any inkling or there's proof, right, that you're not a safe person for me, then you no longer have access to me, right? So if you made it to 2026 and you can still contact me, congratulations. Because there's some people who cannot. And having a view, and this is for all the avoidant attachment people who know they are but have not said it out loud. The key is finding who's not a threat. The key is finding where you feel safe. Because it's that not feeling safe that causes, at least in my experience, to do the avoiding. So if I don't feel safe around you, or if you're not a safe person, the first step for me was to remove access to me. Because for whatever reason, I don't feel safe with you. So once you do that, once that's done, who's left should be people that you feel safe with. And then you can kind of maneuver step by step, right? Because that's not going to fix everything. You still have situations where the person might be safe, but their behavior or something they do flags your nervous system. So your behaviors start to respond to that nervous deregulation that's going on. And my suggestion is to communicate that. Like, okay, your energy's off, or your behavior is changing, and it's flagging me. It's flagging my nervous system. My alarm system's going off. We need to talk about this, or I'm about to disappear. So it's having that awareness, I think, is super important. And then communicating. And if the person is safe, then you should feel safe enough to communicate that. If you don't feel safe enough to communicate that, then is this person really a safe person? And what are you getting out of the interaction? It really needs to be mutually beneficial, right? You can't pour into somebody and not get something out back. for you, because doing that just leaves you empty. So those are some things that work for me. I know some people are like, well, what if the person is unsafe, is somebody in your family or somebody you work with, somebody that you can't separate yourself from? And that's where boundaries come in. And people talk about boundaries all the time. What I will say is, when boundaries are done correctly, it's an amazing thing. So what has worked for me is thinking about it like security clearances. I think in that way because of my previous life. Um, and security clearances are important. Everybody does not have the same access. If you want to think about it like a subscription, right? If that's easier to think about it as a subscription, everybody does not have the same access, and nor should they. So you can have somebody or people who are at your highest level of clearance, right? Those are the people you feel absolutely safe with no matter what. You feel like they will not judge you. You can communicate with them. You get something back in return, right? That's your top level access. And then sort everybody else accordingly. If somebody's giving you some weird vibes, you don't necessarily think they're a threat to you, but they're giving off weird vibes, they get a lower security clearance or a subscription plan, and stay within those boundaries, right? If it's somebody at work or somebody in your family, do whatever it is the bare minimum for that experience. They don't deserve full access at the top level just because of a title that they carry. So being serious about your level of access is key, right? And you can even write it down. Okay, this person gets top secret, SCI, and all the other levels that come with that high level. That means they get access to all of you. And then you have people down at the confidential level that gets barely nothing or no clearance at all, right? They have no access to you. Those are the people who aren't safe. Everybody should not get access to you or your story, your energy or your time. And just because you've known somebody for so long doesn't guarantee them access, right? You can know somebody for 30, 40 years and they're still at the confidential level for whatever reason. But you don't have to explain that to anybody, because the key thing is your safety, making sure your nervous system stays regulated, and that your boundaries are met. So if you have somebody at top secret level and they violate a boundary, then you move them down, right? You can move them around. But the key is your safety. The key is who has access to you and what levels. And the key is, what are you getting out of it? There has to be a level of selfishness, right? If somebody's giving you bare minimum, you don't come in giving them everything. If you got somebody at your top secret level and they're performing as if they should be further down, then you might want to consider moving them, right? And it, again, it depends on what the relationship is. So access to you, what are you getting back out of the connection, whatever that connection is? That should go into how you're screening who gets what clearance, and then your safety level. So all of those things are what I'm using and working on to help with my avoidant attachment challenges that pop up here and there. And again, I am not the spokesperson for avoidant attachment. But I can speak to my experience, and that's what's working for me. Because when my nervous system is regulated, I'm a much easier person to be around. I'm not as jumpy, I'm not as snappy, I'm not as defensive, and I'm not as scared that someone's going to hurt me, right? Because if you fear that, you might want to look at what their access is. And removing expectations from people who do not have the capacity, nor have they shown you they have the capacity to perform at that level. Because let's be honest, everybody has issues, right? Everybody has challenges, everybody has mess. You can't live on the planet and not pick up the mess and the pollution from anything, something, a lot of things. So expecting someone to show up as a pristine example of humanity, you're already losing. So it's really just trying to figure out what you have the capacity to deal with. Because if you put people on a pedestal, which I have been guilty of, you're setting them up to fail and you're setting yourself up for disappointment. You're making someone perform to a script that they do not have. So when they don't do something you think they should, now you're upset. Now you're dysregulated. So understanding that everybody is human and they have their own mess, it's really deciding what you're going to allow, what you have the capacity for. That has helped me a lot too. So I say all that to say, I did have to leave a part of myself back in 2025, but there were parts of me that weren't authentically me. It was what I used to survive the traumas and the grief. And I appreciate every single phase of who I was because it got me to where I'm at. But now I have integrated the things that I have been running from and it feels whole again. For people who are deficient in the sight arena, it's like when you go to the eye doctor and they're doing the flipping of the lenses to get your prescription. And it's kind of like they flipped it to the most clear version versus where I was at last year. So hopefully some of the stuff I just rambled on about could help some other people because I have had people reaching out to me around that. So yes, if you are dealing with dissociative amnesia, you can regain your memories back. It's not as scary as it might be because some of them can come back really, really quick. Like once you acknowledge what's going on, you got to find ways to help move it along. Like for me, music was a big thing. And then just talking to people who remembered things that helped me. If you are an avoidant attachment or you're in a relationship with somebody who's an avoidant attachment, there is hope. The person just really needs to do the work and do it for themselves, not for somebody else. And boundaries are a great thing. Boundaries work. And be realistic about you, yourself, but be realistic about everybody else too. You can't expect someone to save you. You have the tools. You have to be the one to make those decisions. No one's coming to save you. Hate to break it to you. It's just the old you who needs you to be better. So, hopefully, everybody started 2026 on a high note. I'm ecstatic of where this is headed. My therapy has dropped a little bit from once a week to once every other week, so that's a good sign. But I do know if I need to jump it back up, I absolutely can, and there's no shame in that. So you all take care. If you have any questions or just you want to share a part of your story, think it might help some other people, let me know. Let me know. But in the meantime, you guys take care. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.